as I started to work through that stuff, it was crazy because I finally looked at my husband and was like, I get it now. I get why you do the things you do, why you react the way that you react when I do certain things.
Yo soy la madre, I'm the creator. Yo soy la reina, I am the maker. You can bow down now or bow down later. I don't need you to be my validator. I am the healer, la curandera. I'm starting fires, don't need madera. Deep as an ocean, light as a feather. Bring on the dragons, I am the slayer.
You're listening to Mom's New Identity podcast. I'm your host, Amber Ivana, and on this podcast, we'll be discussing topics ranging from the realities and challenges of motherhood and raising a family, healing your inner child, and mental health, and last but certainly not least, tips and education around business and productivity so that you can turn your passions and purpose into a full-time career.
Hello and welcome back to Mom's New Identity. I'm your host, Amber Ivana, and today's episode is going to be about healing and relationships. And I'm going to apologize for my voice. I'm a little congested. I'm just getting over, I don't know if it was the flu or bronchitis. I don't know. It started with congestion in my chest and moved up to my face. And it's been like a week and a half. My whole family got sick, but we're good. We're doing good. We're okay. Slowly but surely. So you might hear my cough drop in my mouth moving around, so I apologize if that sound is annoying to you, but yeah, so that's also part of the reason why I was not able to get a new episode in for you guys 2 weeks ago. I do like to stay on a consistent schedule when it comes to posting every 2 weeks until I can manage to do every week. And my initial reason for doing that is because I was doing 2 podcasts. And unfortunately, I had to come to the realization that I was trying to put too much on my plate. And I'm having to step back from the other podcast that I have that is with me and my dad. We're posting 1 more episode. And then we're just going to hold off until I can kind of possibly hire help with this podcast. But for now, everything is just grassroots, I guess you could say. I do it all myself. So enough of an introduction and explanation and all of that stuff. I just wanted to catch you guys up because I want you to know that I do plan on being here to give you episodes consistently. I am going to start working on actually putting together a list of potential guests. And I've already kind of had my eye on some potential creators and just people that I feel like their content essentially is relative to what it is that we talk about on this podcast. So a beautiful Heidi Rojas, who is actually the person that sings the intro song, if you love the intro song, she has actually agreed to before I even started this podcast, she had agreed to come onto my podcast. So Heidi, if you're listening, I want you to know I'm going to reach out to you very soon so we can arrange something and we can just kind of chat. Her profile, her songs, her link tree are all linked in my show notes as well as the YouTube description if you're watching this on YouTube. So go check out her Go check out her music. It's really awesome. It's super inspiring. She's really great. So I can't wait to have her on this podcast. But before she is on, I plan on having my very first guest be someone that's very near and dear to me. So stay tuned till the end of this episode to find out who that special first guest is going to be. Okay. Anyways, getting back into it. Today's episode, healing and relationships. And initially, I wanted to do this episode in a way that was kind of addressing, I guess, focusing more on men's issues and men's mental health. And I realized in retrospect that not that their mental health is not important. I think, how do I put this? I think I am not one to tell people specifically the women that have men in their lives that struggle with mental health, what they should or shouldn't do. I can certainly give advice as far as what has worked for me and what I've learned in therapy, what I've learned in my healing journey. And that's more or less what this episode is going to be. And I want to do my best to keep it fairly neutral as far as the parties in the relationship, because I think this can apply to really any sort of relationship, whether it's a heteronormative relationship, or I should say a cis-het relationship, or any sort of queer relationship, regardless of gender identity or a sexual preference or any of those things. But I will say, though, that because the nature of my relationship is that of a cis-het relationship, my perspectives are going to apply in that situation. Okay? Yeah. So I just want to put that out there. I'm just going to tell you right now, if me using that term irks you, this probably isn't the podcast for you. Because I just don't, I'm not tolerant of people who are bothered by the idea of using certain pronouns or gender identities or any of that stuff. So if that bothers you, you can leave now. There's the door, bitch. No, but seriously, this is not the podcast for you. If you're willing to listen and swallow that pill, if it's something that actually bothers you, and take some time to listen, I appreciate you. I appreciate you putting aside maybe your internalized biases and still sticking around to listen. But I am going to tell you right now that I am not tolerant of any sort of homophobia, transphobia, racism, sexism, any of that stuff. All the isms, bigots, all of that stuff. You can just, you can go. You can leave. Okay. Anyways, I keep getting sidetracked, so my ADHD. Let's get into it. Okay. Relationships and healing. I'm going to start off by sharing with you all a little bit of background about my relationship. I am going on 8 years married. I can't believe that took me a second to recognize. I'm going on 8 years married with my husband. We were actually engaged after 6 months of dating. So crazy enough, 6 months of dating. But you know what? I think the first couple of dates, we were very straightforward about what we wanted in, I guess, our relationship, like what we were looking for. My husband was I tell a lot of people this because I just love to brag about it. My husband, I think the first or second day that we were like texting before we actually went on our first date, he straight up said, listen, if you are not serious, you're not looking for something serious, let me know right now because I don't want to waste my fucking time. And I was like, oh, that's a man. And what's crazy enough is I had just gotten out of like a situationship. I wouldn't even call it a relationship. I got out of a situationship with someone who had commitment issues. So the fact that this man came up and was like, listen, this is what I'm looking for. Don't waste my fucking time. I was like, ooh. Any other situationships that tried to come my way, I was like, nope, no, I'm seeing someone. So yeah, that was just to let you guys know. Okay. Right. Like the fact that that's how we started, guys, take some notes. Okay. Like take real good notes because that right there, that got me hot. But anyways, so our relationship just quickly developed because I think we were both just very straightforward about what we wanted for our lives and our future, in a relationship and a partner, and we shared very similar values. And so I think that was really, we just knew, and here we are going on 8 years married. We have 2 beautiful children that are 2 and about to be 1. Oh my gosh. We're about to have 2 toddlers. And so that has been an interesting experience, having 2 kids under 2 and now soon to be 2 under 3. And it's just been a wild ride, but I would not do it with anybody else. I would not go on this ride of marriage and parenthood. If I could go back, I would always choose my husband because he's my soulmate, in my opinion. But anyways, I'm getting all gushy and mushy. I like to keep my relationship fairly private for the most part, which is probably why you maybe don't see him a lot on my socials, maybe in my stories, maybe a post here and there, but that is intentional. Okay. So those of you that are listening to this, that are getting the scoop, y'all lucky because I don't always talk about this kind of stuff. So anyways, our relationship developed very quickly. And, we were super excited. We got married. I want to say, we got engaged in like 2014 and then married in 2015. But it was like, a little over a year that we were engaged. So we were engaged for a year. So it was a prolonged engagement, just to make sure, just in case. I will tell you this much though. The biggest thing that I think made me feel like he was the one is that he felt, as much as people might hear this and be like, what? That doesn't sound like a compliment. He felt safe to me, and he still is safe to me. Something that feels like scary, like you don't know what to expect, probably gonna end up being a toxic relationship. Just saying. So maybe I felt a little crazy wild to him because we'll get into that right now. Again, we got married in 2015 and then began our first year of marriage, and that was a wild ride, let me tell you, because I had a lot of repressed anger. Funny story, I just recently really learned the difference between repressed and suppressed. So repressed is basically when you are stuffing feelings that you didn't necessarily realize you were pushing down, emotions, possibly negative emotions, sadness, anger, whatever. I should say so-called negative emotions, because no emotions are negative or positive. It's just what we associate with that emotion. Repress is really that you push down those emotions. You don't feel them. You don't experience them. You just try to dismiss them without being consciously aware of it. Suppressing is when you do it intentionally. You're feeling those things and then you choose not to experience it because maybe it's uncomfortable. Maybe you don't feel safe. Maybe you're scared of being judged, whatever the situation. But that is the difference. So getting back to it, I had a lot of repressed anger from my childhood that I was not entirely aware of. Okay. And that really came out in the form of me just being hypercritical of his performance as far as maybe career goals or business goals that we had. That was the main thing. And I, as much as I don't like to admit it, I was not a very safe person for him, right? I would get very angry very fast. I would yell sometimes. And then he would in turn maybe yell. And when he yelled, it would scare me. So then it would stop. I'm not going to go into some of our very specific, only people that know us will know that. But some of our fights escalated very quickly and could have ended up in divorce, quite honestly. Had my husband filed for divorce in those first couple of years, it would have been warranted, if I'm totally honest, because he took the brunt of my anger, and that was not fair to him. And I always had very, very high, almost unrealistic expectations of him. And I realized that a lot of that came from this place of expecting him to be the one that made me happy, to be the one that was supposed to follow through and be consistent and show up for me, because my own father had trouble keeping a job, and it put a lot of stress on me as a young adult. having to manage a part-time job while trying to stay in sports, while trying to manage my academic career in high school. And that's no disrespect or, I guess, anything like that to my father. He's very much aware of that. We've had that conversation. We've processed that. And he has come to take accountability for that. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that he struggled very much with depression, and he has bipolar disorder. And so he struggled with depressive episodes and manic episodes and such. And we actually talk about that in our other podcasts, which will be posted if you do want to check that out. But it's a very emotional episode. Honestly, as I'm recording this now, I have yet to edit it because I'm so scared. I don't know if I'm scared. I'm just like nervous to edit it because I don't want to have to listen back because it's going to make me emotional. Here I am talking about you got to feel your feelings. Maybe it would be good for me. Anyways, the fact that my father struggled financially and it put a lot of stress on me as a child, as a young adult, it made me angry when my husband maybe wasn't consistent or maybe didn't follow through on the things he said he was going to do. And in retrospect, or I should say now that I know what I know, and looking back, I realized I was just being triggered. And it had nothing to do with the situation. It didn't. And we had a really bad fight, and I just got so angry, and my dad was actually able to come in and kind of mediate for us and just kind of helped us come back to a good place. And he encouraged us to try and work things out. My dad, he's always had a lot of compassion for my husband because he sees a lot of my husband in himself. They just have, both of them, my father and my husband, both just have very selfless hearts. They have servant hearts, I should say. And they love their families and they care so deeply about their families and would do anything for their families. And I think both are very sensitive. While you may not always see that with my husband, I think it's a beautiful trait that he has. I love that he is sensitive because it's what makes him an amazing husband and a very loving father. So if you're listening to this, honey, I want you to know that I love that about you. So I'm literally trying not to get emotional. Like I could just like start bawling. But as we got past that first like year or two of marriage, we ended up getting to a place where we started to be mentored by a couple in an MLM. And I kind of talk about that experience a little bit on my YouTube channel before I decided to make it into a podcast. You can go check that out. The the title of the video is How I Lost Myself in an MLM. But in summation, I learned to suppress my emotions and my feelings as a result of the coaching that I received. I was made to feel that being emotional or emotionally unstable, as they would put it, as a woman was what was keeping my husband from being successful. And now looking back, that was pretty fucking toxic that they said some shit like that, or that they were teaching women that. And they probably still do, to be honest. And very quickly, I learned to ignore my own needs for the sake of keeping the peace, for the sake of not stirring conflict, for not creating conflict. I internalized a lot of feelings of frustration or anger that I was maybe feeling with my husband and his lack of consistency for whatever reason, for not accomplishing what we thought we would accomplish in the ideal time frame. Looking back, we were never meant to stay there. We were always meant for something greater. And I know that now. And I wish I could go back and tell myself, hey, you don't need to be here. I think that for me, I can't speak for my husband, but I can say for me that experience, I think, was an important learning lesson for me. That, yes, it's important to have harmony in your relationship, but not at the expense of your own needs. Not for the sake of making sure that your husband is successful. That's not okay. That's not a partnership. Nor was the former that I mentioned in how I was acting in the beginning of our marriage, just having extreme emotional outbursts and being hypercritical of my husband and constantly reminding him what he was not doing, right? Neither of those are good places to be in, either end of the spectrum. And the end of the spectrum where I was just ignoring a lot of my own needs and just trying to, be the glue and make sure that my husband was, successful, whatever, doing what I need to do to support him. I lost myself. I did. I lost myself. And what's crazy is one day when we were out, trying to find potential recruits for this MLM that we're in, we came across a guy who owned the crystal shop in downtown Summerlin called Silver Post. And he was a really interesting guy, but he liked to tell his story about how he he just had like a midlife crisis, or not a midlife crisis. He lost everything and rediscovered himself in true happiness and peace and joy. If I could really name it, he probably had a spiritual awakening, but he started at the end of his story reading the energies of the people around him and recommending what stones or whatever that would help them. And he had addressed me and looked at me and was like, you have a tendency to be very submissive. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm not submissive. It's not me. And looking back, he was 100% correct, because I was taught that to be submissive. That's not a healthy place to be. At least for me, it wasn't. I don't think, honestly, in any sort of relationship, being submissive, that's not a good place to be. Like, you should be absolutely encouraged to have your own opinions, to have your own thoughts, to have your own sense of individuality. 100%. If someone is expecting you to be submissive, that is not the person for you. And mind you, my husband was not telling me that this is what he expected from me, okay? This is what I was being told that would make a healthy, happy marriage, according to this MLM borderline cult that we're in, okay? So fast forward a couple of years, we've had kids. You guys more or less know the story. I lost myself, lost my identity, didn't know who the hell I was, and started working on healing and breaking through my childhood trauma. And it was like a light bulb went off, and I realized, holy shit. That's why I was so angry with my husband all those times, because really I was being triggered by his actions for childhood memories that I had repressed, or feelings that I had repressed for so many years. And as I started to work through that stuff, it was crazy, because I finally looked at my husband and was like, I get it now. I get why you do the things you do. Why you react the way that you react when I do certain things. Why you shut down. Why maybe you only retaliate when it gets to a certain level. Why you give up. Why you don't follow through. And that's not to, say that my husband's one to give up. Trust me, he's not. He's very persistent. If there's one thing that I feel like he could have given up a long time ago, it was this marriage. But he stuck around. And sometimes I'm like, why did you do that? I was awful. And I said that to him one time, and he looked at me. He goes, I knew there was more to you. I knew you had more to you. I saw that in you. So when I finally started to heal, and I finally started to really just recognize my own toxicity, if I can be honest, I started to approach our conflicts, our disagreements with this mindset of, okay, how might he be triggered by this situation? What actions or things that am I doing that's maybe triggering feelings that are tied to his childhood? And that's the key thing here, right? Is like, if you don't know your partner's childhood and what they experienced, it's going to be really hard to work through conflict. Especially if you haven't worked through your own childhood conflict. But like, it is essential. If there's one thing that I feel like you could take away from this, it's that if you really want to be in a true committed relationship, you need to know each other's background and history and their childhood and how each other was raised. That is extremely important, because that's going to tell you a lot about how that person handles conflict and why they handle conflict in the way that they do, and why they resort to certain coping mechanisms, healthy or otherwise, healthy or unhealthy, I guess you could say, why they would do those things. It wasn't until I learned to be a safe space for myself that I was finally able to be a safe space for my husband and be someone that he felt he could open up to and speak his mind and whatever he's feeling and be validated and feel like he was really heard. And even now, even after doing so much work, we still struggle with that. I have a tendency to go into like, advisor mode and like telling him what he should or shouldn't do, instead of just being like, you know what, that sucks. I'm sorry that you are dealing with that. I just want you to know it's okay to feel what you're feeling. Period. That's it. Like, just leaving it at that. I still struggle with that. But you cannot be a safe space for the person that you love deeply, your partner, until you become a safe space for yourself. Period. Because, and I will tell you this much too, on the flip side of that, having endless compassion for someone whose behaviors are hurting you, that's not compassion if there's no boundaries. That's codependency and people pleasing. It is not compassion if there's no boundaries. Period. Like, boundaries are the line between having healthy conflict and a healthy level of compassion for another person. But tolerating any sort of emotional, verbal, physical abuse from that person, that is not acceptable. It's not. But here's the thing. In the words of the famous movie Perks of Being a Wallflower, we accept the love we think we deserve. Don't come for me if that's not where that's from. I believe that's where that movie is from. Or that line. I believe that's where that quote is from, that movie. But we accept the love we think we deserve. And if you don't love yourself, if you don't have compassion for yourself, you're going to tolerate the worst kind of treatment. Honestly, it's probably why my husband took so much of my shit the first couple of years. That wasn't fair to him. But here we are. And so your relationship can make or break your healing journey. Okay? And however committed you are to that may end up making your relationship stronger, or it could end your relationship for obvious reasons. Because when you really start to work on yourself and you start to give yourself love and compassion, you stop tolerating disrespect and anything other than the care and love that you deserve as a human being. So I'm going to give you a fair warning that healing while you're in a relationship may not have the outcome that you're looking for. It may not end with sunshine and roses and being with that person that you always imagined your life with. Quite honestly, it could end up ending a relationship, ending a marriage. But just know that if it does, if you working on yourself and doing better and healing means that this crucial relationship that was so near and dear to you is a barrier to you becoming the best version of yourself, you were never meant to stay in that relationship. You were only meant to learn something from that relationship. However, if your partner sees your growth and sees your change and is inspired and wants to do the same and wants to do better themselves and start to heal too, hold on to that. It's not easy because everyone heals at different rates. Everyone's healing journey looks very different. Some people will take a lot longer. And I have even heard stories of people having to literally separate, work on themselves, heal, only to realize that was still their person. So don't let anybody tell you like, oh, how could you leave this person after all they've done for you? Or maybe there's kids involved. And people are telling you like, oh no, you can't break up the family. A friend of mine just said that her kids deserve having, I'm trying to remember roughly what she said, but it was more so along the lines that her kids deserve to have two happy parents instead of just two parents in the same household that are unhappy. And whew, that couldn't be more on point accurate, because it's true. Don't let anybody tell you what you should or shouldn't do in your family unit. You have to do what feels right to you. Obviously, you want to consider those around you, right? You don't want to just pull the rug out from underneath someone, but at some point, if you're banging your head against the wall, like trying to get a point across, continuing to bang your head against the wall, that's not going to break for you. Well, you're just going to end up hurting yourself in the long run. So stop doing that. That wall wasn't going to break in the first place. Right? So, all in all, I know I spent a lot of time talking about my own relationship, but that's obviously because it's really just to share my experience with you, right? My experience is not going to apply to every relationship, every situation, okay? I want you to take what I say with a grain of salt, because it's super, super important that, one, you're safe, okay? I don't want somebody to take this episode and think, oh yeah, no, I should stick around, I should see it through. No, No, I think that if you're having a hard time deciding what you need to do, to maybe seek help, seek therapy, an objective outer source, not somebody who's going to be biased. Like, don't go talk to your parents or your friends or anybody that maybe could be swayed a certain way, right? Like, don't do that. That's dangerous, because someone could end up giving you advice that is not truly for you. It's not in your best interest, okay? So, all in all, I'm trying to get to the end of this here. All in all, my hope is that you hear this and it inspires you to do the work regardless of your relationship status. If you're in a relationship, it doesn't mean you can't work on yourself, okay? It doesn't. Your healing journey is your own. And the best thing that you can do to help your partner start to heal is to work on yourself, is to work on you. Now, if you're like me and you have control issues and you feel the need to control everything and everyone around you, in every situation, know that that is going to get you nowhere in your relationship. You have to learn to let go and let God. Okay? Like, that person is going to heal at their own pace, as I mentioned before. So the best thing that you can do is continue to work on you, because, again, until you are a safe space for yourself, you cannot be a safe space for someone else. And that's what people need when they're healing. They need a safe space to be able to process. And sometimes that safe space is by yourself. Okay? And that's okay. But just know that that is the best thing that you can do for your partner, is to heal first. And the right partner, right person, will see that and gravitate towards it and be inspired to do the same. Just know that. Okay? So, for my special guest, it's going to be my husband. I'm going to make him listen to this episode. Believe it or not, people, he does not listen to every episode. He said part of that is because a lot of the things that I talk about on these episodes, he's heard me say a million times over. So I'm sure he's probably glad for me to finally be speaking my mind on a public platform, because I would always speak so passionately about these things and I would never get my voice out there to share what's on my mind. And so I'm hoping that he's proud of me in doing this. But yeah, he doesn't always listen to my episodes. So I'm going to force him to listen to this episode so he can be filled in on what tea I've spilled with y'all. So in the meantime, thank you so much for sticking around. If you're here, you can subscribe, how to follow the show, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can find me on TikTok and Instagram. My DMs are open if you have questions. I am slowly working to try and show up on that page a little bit more frequently, possibly do some lives here and there, just to engage with you guys. I'm terrified of lives. Very terrified, I'll be honest, unless I'm on there with somebody else. But you can follow me on my personal socials as well. So I have a page for this podcast as well as a page I just do like fun TikToks and reels. Honestly, my reels on my personal page are just TikToks reposted. Okay, if you haven't figured that out. But I'll just do some random stuff on TikTok here and there. But you can follow me on there. You can email for the podcast, moms.new.identity at Gmail, I believe it is. Oh god, I should double check that. Please, if you enjoyed this episode and any of the other episodes, leave a review. Your feedback is much, much appreciated. Let us know what you want to hear more of. Let me know. I say us like I got a whole team. Nah, it's just me. For now. But until next time, we'll talk again soon. But I appreciate you. I love you. Let's continue to grow and heal together.
Mom's New Identity podcast is written, directed, and produced by your host, Amber Ivana. Intro music, Madre Creator, is written, produced, and performed by Heidi Rojas Music.